Welcome to CARICOMP Insider, where high-tech facial recognition meets real-world intelligence.
Only 1 in 1,000 people can reliably tell a deepfake from the real thing. Not 1 in 10. Not 1 in 100. 1 in 1,000. And the reason isn't that you're not paying attention, it's that the errors are happening faster than your nervous system can process. That gap between what's fake and what's real is already costing real money. According to reporting from Biometric Update, businesses lost an average of nearly $500,000 to deepfake-related fraud in 2024. Large enterprises saw losses climb past $680,000. And those numbers have been accelerating. Deepfake fraud attempts have surged by 3,000% in recent years. If you've ever received a video call, a voice message, or even a social media clip and assumed it was real because it looked and sounded right, this matters to you. That instinct to trust what you see and hear is exactly what deepfakes exploit. If that feels unsettling, it should. But understanding how these fakes actually break down is how you stop feeling powerless. So where exactly do deepfakes fail? And why can't we see it when they do? Your brain has dedicated hardware for recognizing faces and voices. There's a region called the fusiform face area that processes facial identity almost instantly, without conscious effort. Your auditory cortex does something similar with voices. When a face moves naturally and a voice sounds coherent, your brain stamps it real person before you've even thought about it. That's not a flaw. That's millions of years of evolution optimizing for social survival. But it means you're trusting a system that was built to recognize your neighbor across a campfire, not to catch a synthetic face generated by a neural network. And that's why 58% of fraud experts, people whose entire job is spotting deception, admit they struggle to determine whether synthetic media was involved in an attack. Even the professionals are fighting biology. So if the visuals look convincing and the audio sounds clean, what actually gives a deepfake away? Timing. Specifically, the synchronization between what you see and what you hear. Imagine 2 dancers who've rehearsed together for years. A hand gesture arrives a split second before the music shifts. A turn lands on the exact beat. Now imagine splicing footage from 2 completely different rehearsals. Frame by frame, each dancer looks perfect, but the coordination is off by fractions of a second. You can't consciously see what's wrong, but something feels unsettled. That's what happens with deepfakes. The face is generated by one system, the voice is generated by another, and when the software tries to stitch them together, the synchronization drifts by tiny amounts too small for human perception, but measurable by detection algorithms. This principle has a name in the research literature. It's called cross-modal consistency. Basically, your voice, your lip movements, your facial expressions, and the meaning of your words are all produced by the same physical body. They're connected by shared muscles, shared nerves, shared physics. A deepfake generates each of those channels separately, then tries to line them up. And the first place it fails is where 2 of those channels don't quite match. One of the most teachable examples involves specific sounds. Say the letters M, B, and P out loud. Notice what your lips do? They close completely. That's a biomechanical requirement. You physically cannot produce those sounds without full lip closure. Deepfake systems often fail to replicate this. The generated face will produce the sound of an M or a B, but the lips won't fully seal at the right moment. Researchers call this a phoneme-visme mismatch. The sound and the visible mouth shape don't agree. Your ear hears the right letter. Your eye sees something close enough. But the timing and the mechanics are slightly wrong, and a detection algorithm can catch that discrepancy. Now, the audio side has its own set of tells. According to a systematic review published through ResearchGate, audio deepfake indicators fall into 3 categories. First, spectral artifacts, things like high-frequency noise that gets introduced because the synthesis process can't fully replicate the subtle tonal range of a real human voice. Second, temporal anomalies, inconsistent dynamics and tiny synchronization gaps between syllables. And third, phonetic irregularities, unnatural transitions between sounds that a real vocal tract would produce smoothly. The high-frequency noise is especially telling because human hearing is weakest in exactly those ranges. We literally can't hear the artifacts that a spectrogram picks up instantly. So why not just build a perfect detector and solve this? Because the lab and the real world are 2 very different places. Detection systems trained on clean, curated datasets fall apart when they encounter real-world conditions. Audio that's been compressed, transmitted through a phone call, recorded through a laptop microphone, or streamed over a video platform. Each of those steps introduces its own distortion, and that distortion can mask the very artifacts the detector was trained to find. According to research published on ArcSiv, when advanced voice synthesis attacks like Tacotron-2 and WaveNet were tested under realistic conditions, both human listeners and AI detectors dropped to accuracies between 50 and 60%. That's barely better than a coin flip. For investigators, that means evidence captured from a phone call or a social media post is far harder to verify than a clean studio recording. For the rest of us, it means the deepfake that reaches your screen has already passed through conditions designed to make detection harder, not by the attacker but just by the way the internet works. And people reasonably believe they'd catch a fake if they just watched more carefully. That confidence makes sense. We've spent our whole lives reading faces and judging voices. But studies from the National Center for Biotechnology Information show that AI models outperformed human participants, hitting 95% accuracy compared to 80% for humans, and that was under controlled conditions. Once the deepfake quality goes up, both humans and machines struggle equally. Paying closer attention doesn't help when the errors exist at a resolution your senses weren't built to detect. The technology hasn't beaten us by looking more real. It's beaten us by failing in places we physically cannot perceive. The flaws are there, in microsecond timing gaps, in high-frequency spectral noise, in lips that don't quite seal on the letter B. But they exist below the threshold of human awareness. That's the actual vulnerability, not your judgment, your biology. So 3 things to take with you. First, deepfakes don't fail in how they look. They fail in how their audio and video sync together, at speeds too fast for you to notice. Second, specific sounds like M, B, and P require your lips to fully close. And deepfake systems often get that wrong, creating a mismatch between what you hear and what the mouth actually does. Third, real-world conditions like compression and phone transmission make detection harder for everyone, humans and machines alike. You're not failing to spot fakes because you're careless. You're failing because these errors were never meant for human eyes and ears to catch. Whether you analyze evidence for a living or you just got a suspicious video from someone you trust, knowing where the cracks are is the first step toward not being fooled. The full story's in the description if you want the deep dive.
Now you know something most people in this industry don't. Use it. And when you're ready to put it to work, caracomp.com. We'll see you tomorrow.